you all for our third workshop for the Ambassador Program. Even though there are some of you who are not necessarily ambassadors, but are community members of STEM Sisters. So we welcome you all for our third workshop, or we call it January 2022 workshop, which is a very special one. And our theme is harnessing our feminine power. For the speakers to talk about their journey, how they started, because a lot of us here as ambassadors at the very early stage, and you have achieved so significant milestones in your careers, but that is so impressive. But how did it all begin and where did you make those steps? This is what we really like to hear and be inspired from.
I loved how you said about, finding your superpower. And those things are uniquely you. No one can replicate that. And so it was almost like dialing that up and leaning into that and thinking, well, I'm never going to stand out and progress if I try to blend in. So I think to all of the women, that's really important and really critical to find what's those unique identifiers about yourself. And finally, I feel like for me, as I progressed through my career, I almost treated myself as if I was an organization. And I thought, well, companies that do well have boards. So I'm going to have one person that's going to inspire me, and one person that's going to give me a nudge when I need one, or one person that's going to motivate me when I'm questioning myself. So it's almost like having like this group of champions around you that help support your development as well. But I feel like over the last 10 years, last 10, 12 years, those things that are uniquely you.
That courage to lean in to that individuality and that authenticity, rather than continue to try and mold yourself into another part of that homogenous team. I wish I'd had that advice earlier in my career, because in my experience, I sort of immediately, I feel like in my upbringing, I grew up in very kind of white communities where I was living, where I went to school. I went to an elite university. I joined, a very traditional corporate profession, and I just have this natural tendency to assimilate, because I've always been sort of molding yourself into these different groups, and I actually was quite successful at it. But it got to that certain point where it took me a long while to realize how much I'd molded myself into trying to be one of the group, and move away from some of my core identifiers, because I thought that what I saw my real self as a weakness, because it didn't look like everyone else.
Hang on a sec. These are the things. I have such a rich culture, the artistic, intellectual heritage of my people. And it doesn't matter if I'm Sri Lankan or Lebanese or Arabic, or it doesn't matter where you come from, but we all have something amazing that's given to us. But because for such a long time, I guess the Anglo-Saxon standards of beauty and professionalism and competency has been the norm, we've been trying to match up to that. Courage and that confidence, for me, really came with time. And hopefully enough of us have taken enough time that, the cycle is shortened for you guys, I hope. Attributing, your success, don't do that to external factors, own it. Don't be too self-critical. I'm always berating my own performance. And again, probably the upbringing, right? Because we'd come home from school or university and 95, that's an A-. It's not good enough. So when you go into the corporate world, and particularly with men, they might know like 10% of what you know. And if we're sitting for an interview, or if you're sitting for, I don't know, some project briefing, you will spend the 2 hours before preparing. That guy will walk in and he'll knock it out of the park, because he's just, he's hustling. He's got the right words. And we may be too technical. We may be too detailed. I don't know. But finding that balance between competency, mastery, communications, marketing yourself, I think those are some of the things that help me overcome what I see for myself as barriers overall. But women actually network less than men. And it's our tendency to undersell our values and strengths. And it's a reluctance to leverage connections as a means to get ahead in your career. Stop doing that. One way to shed any negative thought patterns you may have about networking is simply to avoid a transactional approach. So it's not about what can you do for me or what can I do for you? It's about creating relationships, genuine connections that are mutually interesting and mutually beneficial. And I tend
all right, and over the last 10 years, aside from being the fastest baby to be born in a hospital, I have lived in like 5 different countries, and in terms of I've had 100+ rejections. I should say job rejections, not Tinder or Bumble. So I've had 100+ rejections when it comes to jobs that I've applied for, and I've worked in 17 different jobs, and I've been fired about 3 times, and I've had 16 volunteer roles. And I actually shared this slide in a presentation I did earlier with, I think it was the MELD International Students Conference. And I spent some time putting together all these jobs. So here's a quick glance. And these aren't really jobs you'll see on my LinkedIn, but on the left here are all the paid jobs I've done. Startup space, whenever I talk about entrepreneurs, the main names, like here, I guess you guys are all in science, which is really cool. You've got Mary Curie here, Sylvia Earle, but the main names I get is like Elon Musk, Richard Branson. These sort of names are really common, but rarely do I get names of people who have been through the similar experiences as yourself, and those are the role models you have. So this is something worth thinking of and seeing how you can cultivate your series of role models who have a similar lived experience to you, because it'll always be more achievable in that way. And yes, there'll be far fewer, but it's worth seeking those people out and then asking, if I can't find them, why can't I find them? Because they do exist. You might have to dig a little bit deeper. All right. Is a company technical expert or an academic expert? Look, everything from here is below. So people are more likely to trust a person like yourself than they are the CEO, than they are an NGO representative, board of directors, regular employee, government official, and journalist. So I think one thing that this says is that there's an enormous amount of trust placed in people that are just relatable, that are like oneself. Now, this study is done from Australia. There's also, you can pick the different countries and it'll show up different. Like, for instance, in India, government shows up further along the spectrum, right? And so this also feeds into workplace culture and who we trust at work and who we listen to and how we end up behaving at work. One of the questions I want to pose to you guys, diving into this, I guess, topic of different cultures in workspaces, and I might put you guys into into groups if I can, and I want you guys to have a look at the questions. In what way have you changed yourself to fit into a workplace in Australia? I'm going to pop it in the question in the chat. So in what ways have you changed yourself to fit in